Although I am a Christian, and you know what, some things have been hard, to get through. Obviously, my dad died last year. The year before, my mum had cancer, so I've had things were get doing my head in. To be honest, some days I just couldn't cope. Um, I had the coronavirus last year. Also, my mum did. I was just going really dizzy all the time. Well, my dad died with it. Have I mentioned that before? I forgot. Anyway, I'll carry on. My dad, yeah, I think I have, but my dad went to the hospital for some tests, urgent tests. Came back. It wasn't too bad for a few days, but by the weekend, he was refusing his medication, water, and food, and it was so horrible to see. We had to get the paramedics, and my dad's eyes were rolling back really slow. I was wondering what on earth was going on. It never actually occurred to me that he had COVID. They told us the next day that he had a few chest infection, cellulitis, and he's got coronavirus and he's not going to pull through. And it took his voice away. My dad couldn't speak. It was horrible to see. We did a few Zoom calls. He sent me all right one day, waving and that, but other days he was just asleep, and it was so hurting because we couldn't see him. Obviously, when we found out that my dad had the virus, I had to book him for a test, and the next morning, I got a text to say I'm positive and I need to isolate for 10 days. And then I think that may have been Tuesday or Wednesday it was Tuesday when I went down. Obviously I stayed in the house, and it was Wednesday morning when I got the text message. And then I think by Wednesday night I was going really dizzy, and it was a horrible feeling. And during that time, it was my birthday, and it was worst birthday ever. All right, I've got some great friends and family, so they were giving me a card and that, but I couldn't really relax. My mum had it. She had extremely bad fever symptoms. I thought she was dying a few days. I was sweating cobs, and she had the fire on full blast and still freezing. Not just that, a few other things besides. And then my mum had a lot of pain. About a month after or so, she kept getting pain, and she had a few tests, and she had blood clots on her lungs, and that was one of the after effects to COVID. That long COVID thing. She's just finished her tablets actually. I think she had 3 months supply. So she started taking them beginning of January. And also, I wasn't very well. I'm just getting right, and I think a few doctors have said it was COVID related. There was a lot of saliva coming off my tongue from the beginning of January. Probably about maybe. I don't think it was the first week. Maybe the second week of January. And all throughout the day, I was wondering, what on earth is this? Phone doctors up. Oh, we can't really see you at the moment due to COVID. We don't really want to look in people's mouths, do we? I told somebody else about it. Said, change your doctors. I've seen a doctor. They wear all PPE and that. And I thought, so they were prescribing me what they thought was oral infection or something, or one or two doctors probably, I think they thought it was thrush while they were explaining it to them. And then I kept phoning up, telling him, even phoned, hospital number, and she said it was COVID related. It's just getting a bit better, getting better bit by bit actually. In the morning, still getting quite a lot of. I know some people might be thinking, no, that's not much. That's not much. Well, actually, it was, because the tongue felt semi-numb as well. I remember one night in January, I had a bit of whiskey. Well, my tongue next day were burning all day. I went to a pharmacy and I said, excuse me, told him what I've just told you. He said, it could be thrush though, but it could be something else. I'd definitely see a doctor with that. And he could see all the saliva coming off it. I was quite scared, wondering how long is this going to go on for. Been to the dentist, he's had a look and said, no, not wrong with it, kind of thing. But by the time he had a look, it was more or less alright in the daytime kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? It's just in the morning now, so I think it's going gradually. But I think it's some sort of infection from COVID myself. And yeah, a few other doctors, the dentist and the two doctors think so as well. So I was just gulping all the time, and there were a few days when I was just spitting in a bowl because I was getting so much of it, and it was like a milky sort of saliva as well. Do you know what I mean? And I felt really, had a few walks, and I felt like I was going to faint just walking round the park. When I got back, I thought, what on earth is going off? I just felt mega tired, and I thought, it's to do with that, COVID. It is very, very deadly. Obviously, it finished my dad off, and it was so heartbreaking. I did say to people though that he's not got long left. And last year we had carers in for my dad, and I think my dad had a lot of ailments, but I think what triggered it off, he had a fall in the hospital. He went in last year he went in 4 times total last year. He went in last February because he had an obstruction on his stomach, and he was screaming in agony. I might have said it on one of my old YouTube channels, one of my old programs on my channel, should I say. And he was screaming through the night, and his stomach was like a basketball. I thought, gosh. And they said he had an obstruction, but they never really went into detail with that. He was in for over a week, I think, and but during his time in the hospital, because my dad used to go dizzy a bit, quite a lot actually, they never gave him a walking frame. And he was going to the toilet one night and lost his balance, went back, smashed his head on the floor, and hit his head on the floor. Woke everybody up on the ward. The guy opposite said to me, he went with a right bang. They had to take him straight for an X-ray. He wasn't very happy in hospital, actually. He was, I think he was stressed and moaning a bit, actually. First time I've seen him as bad as that. and obviously I don't think he wanted to go in. I think he was fed up and that. But came back home, and I don't know, there was something, he weren't right. He had a few other falls as well, Ben, besides. Then he had a water infection in his mind. And obviously it messes the nerves up. Just having a drink. Coffee. And he was like a different person. Arkley swore before, but when he had a water infection, he was saying fucking a lot. Fuck this. And I was getting really stressed and worried. I actually thought he was possessed. And I mentioned this to somebody who was a Christian involved in deliverance, but he never replied. Don't know why, probably didn't know what to say. And he's seen him before, actually. So that was a really bad time. Really, really bad. No one knows what people are going through sometimes. And he kept falling, I don't really want to go into detail, but I'll just say that he kept going to the toilet in the kitchen without, not going to the toilet properly, kind of thing, messing himself a few times as well, and I couldn't grasp it, and he was getting mad, stressed, and obviously then we had to have carers, and then doctors were ringing up probably once, but every week at first, and then every 2 weeks, and then I mentioned to one doctor that he fell in the hospital, hit his head. So the doctor said, well, he's not had an x-ray for that. I said, oh yeah, they took him straight away for an x-ray. So he says, I've got no mention on my computer that he's had an MRI scan. So paramedics are going to have to come and take him because it could be very serious. There's no mention whatsoever, so he's going to have one. Even if he's had one, they haven't reported it, put it down on computer, so he's going to have to go. And obviously this was during the lockdown. It was about last May, I think it was, yeah. So he were in for about 10 or 11 days. And some days, apparently, I spoke to a consultant and he said, with the consultant or doctor, let me think. One of them anyway said, what's actually wrong with him? He's very chirpy, seems absolutely fine. He's having a good talk to the nurses and that. What's actually wrong with him? Because we don't know what's wrong with him. Another one said he's extremely, extremely anxious. We're going to do some more tests. It could be dementia what he's got. Although we can't really tell at the moment because of the water infection. So we don't know what it is. But that's what we're thinking. He's got a bit of dementia. They were very good, and my mum rang the hospital up, and I think one of the doctors rang up one day, and my dad was talking to my mum on the phone, and my dad thought he was going to die. He was going to be kept in the hospital. He was scared of the virus, Obviously we couldn't see him because it was during lockdown, and no one could see anybody. Although, you know, did think he were going to come back, and he did. He did come home, actually. And then it was getting worse and worse. But better with the water infection went. But then he got an infection in his legs then. That was because that he couldn't go upstairs, so he had an hospital bed brought in. But he didn't like it because it was an air mattress with the air kept going in, and obviously it were moving about once you lay on it. So my dad tried it out a few times, but he didn't like it. I had to set the bed up properly with the buttons, you know, so he had to, you know, he was struggling breathing if it was flat down, so it had to be up at a certain angle as well. And my dad were very specific as well. Now my dad, he had a remote on, so my dad could have experimented with it, but with the buttons. But he always wanted me to help him sit comfortable, which I did most of the time. So he wanted to sit in his chair and go to sleep, so he felt more comfortable. But the only problem with that is that his legs weren't getting circulation. So then he was getting worse walking. Obviously, we had 3 lots of carers as well from 3 different companies. The first lot from NHS, they were absolutely fantastic. They were like nurses, you know, really good and caring. The second lot from a council, you know, I would say most of them were really good and caring and that. And then the third company, you know, there were only a few what were really compassionate about the job, doing caring. You know, fair enough. You know, some people only go into jobs because of money. Some people might not be managing material, for instance. Might just think, oh, I need the money, you know, I'll work my way up and that, and boss people about, or whatever, or there might be, I don't know, a bully that does landscape gardening or something like that kind of thing. Building work, you know, do you know what I mean? And they might treat other people like muck. Anyway, but most of the carers were alright, apart from a Muslim who we didn't want anymore. Now, we like everybody, don't get me wrong, but this guy, I think he was from Birmingham, had a big beard and that, and the first time, you know, he sent fine. But second time he came, he was putting his arms on his hips and telling me, Dad, to wash yourself. Come on, wash yourself then, wash yourself, with that sort of attitude. And my dad says, I don't want him coming again. And I don't know why people have got care jobs if they speak to people like that. And at the time, I may have been out, and I think my mum was in the other room. Forgot now, but yeah, and somebody else says there's been a lot of complaints about him. You know, one of them got sacked for not wearing a mask, although he was very friendly, to be honest. But somebody followed him when he went in somebody's house, because somebody will have complained, you see. Oh, such and such is carer's been and he's not wearing a mask. Oh, really? All right. Well, we didn't complain, obviously. Perhaps he should have wore a mask. You know, that was the rules, so I don't know why he didn't. Do you know what I mean? But you know, anyway, yeah, my dad was getting worse and that, and he needed assistance from walking to one room to the other because he used to like sitting in the conservatory and going in the room. But then he had a few falls. In the summer I took him outside a few times when it was hot. Just can't believe it, mate. You know, some days I better than others. You know, some days while I'm talking, you know, just feel for him. You know, so it's been quite hard to mention this because obviously my dad thought he was going to get healed, but he did say a few times last year that he wants to go home to heaven. You know, and I think he knew that because he held my hand a few times and he says, "I'll be all right once I've gone. Remember that." Yeah, so my dad had a few falls, and then I might have mentioned this. He was hallucinating, you know, seeing things which weren't there. Obviously, he still prayed in his own time and that. But this was like there's two women outside, there's two nurses outside, or stuff like that, and you couldn't very well say no because he was adamant. He says, "Of course they are. They're there. I can see them," and he was getting really worse with that. Seeing a baby on the floor and stuff like that. Obviously not visions from God, but there's a difference, my friends. So, mentioned it to a doctor, but by this time they strengthened my dad's depression tablet. My dad never liked that tablet anyway because of side effects. I think they can make you more moody. Yeah, he was always a bit off with that tablet, my dad, and sometimes he never took it. But you know, when he were all right, and there were a time when I sorted his tablets out about a year and a half ago, because he couldn't even get him out of boxes, wouldn't get him mixed up, wondering which ones were morning and evening ones. So I sorted him out for him and made a list of what was morning, afternoon and evening tablets. So he were all right with that list. But I used to get them ready as well, put them in a jar, so it was more simpler for him. But there were times when he didn't even take them as well. Do you know what I mean? So it was, you know, tough, very tough at times, hard going and that and stuff. You know, because obviously my dad needed care and that, and they actually upped carers to 4 times a day at one point, but my mum didn't want them coming 4 times a day because they weren't doing anything. Sometimes they used to come, say a few words, and give him 1 tablet in the afternoon and go. So we came back from a care room one day, see my grandma, my auntie, and we were only gone for about an hour, and my dad were on the floor. So it was the same time the carers were just coming, and I forgot what they're called now, some assessor, and this guy decided that he needs the chair hiring, and he put a bar in the kitchen so my dad could hold on to. Something else as well, forgot now. I think they brought the commode. They brought a few other things in all besides. Did they bring the bed? This was about end of May, June. I forgot now. Yeah, so, where am I now? Oh, yeah, so, about October time, yeah, so, mentioned, oh, yeah, because he was getting his hallucinations and that, yeah, so, doctor said paramedics will have to come. My dad was very adamant that he didn't want to go because he didn't like it last time. Nobody likes hospitals though, do they? So just getting another drink. It's thirsty work doing this. So I hope people can respect me. No joke, Northern Hero. I tell the truth. 100%. Just give me a few seconds. You know, I'm going to continue in a bit. Yeah, so my dad didn't want to go to the hospital. The paramedics were kind of pushing him. So they went and sat in the ambulance outside. I got a phone call from a female doctor. She said, because my dad's had a few falls, it could be a bleed on the brain. Now, if your dad dies tonight, are the paramedics willing to go to court? Because they will be responsible because they didn't take him, regardless if your dad didn't want to go or not. So it was quite intense phone call, you know. So the doctor said, are the paramedics sat outside now? So I had a look and they were still waiting. So she says, oh, can you take the phone? And I want to speak to him. Because she said, we're going to have a discussion because my dad needs to go to the hospital to be checked out on his brain. Actually, they never got back in touch with us with that, I don't think, or did they? Anyway, I think they did. I forgot. You know, there were a lot of things going off. So they came back in, had a chat, and you know, with the doctor and the younger paramedic. I think she was a bit took back on what the doctor said to her. She says, basically, I've just been put into a corner, and she says, am I willing to go to court if anything happens to your dad? So we've got to have a talk, and we've got to try and make him to go, you know, but with your help. So it was a really tough thing to do, but we didn't expect anything. But obviously, my dad then said, yeah, okay, looks like I'll have to go then. So he had a few tests. I think he was just there for a few days, maybe 3 days. Came back home, and he kept saying he's had an absolutely horrible time. He doesn't want to talk about it. Well, he was very poorly, but we never went into detail. And that week, it was getting worse and worse. And by the weekend, refusing his medication, food, water, didn't want any. This was like Saturday, and we were getting worried. We just thought, oh, he might get better, might feel a bit better Sunday. Sunday, same. Then we phoned paramedics up then. They came, and my dad was he was confused. And he thought, I was taking blood out over his finger. But it was the paramedic. I was stood behind my dad, and my dad was shouting at the paramedic and saying my name. "Don't do that! It's hurting me!" And he was really shouting at the paramedic. But it wasn't me, obviously. I was stood behind my dad. And then they said, right, because even though my dad was very thin, frail, he had a lot of strength and he was pushing himself back on the chair, and they couldn't put him in. So they asked for my help. They said, "You're going to have to help us, because if not, if you don't help us, it will seem like a kidnap." So I put my dad in the ambulance chair for him to wheel him in, and that was the very first time that I never said goodbye to him. He really didn't want to go, but he had to check his brain. Obviously was having some really horrible, bad times, dark times, where he was refusing everything, and I was getting his medication ready, and saying, "It's here. I brought you your tablets for you. You don't have to sit in the other room. Have them here. This is your water." And he was just going, "No, no," waving him away. And yeah, I felt really hurt that I had to force him into the chair for the paramedics to take him. And then the next day we got a phone call from one of the main doctors to say he's got a chest infection, which we knew about anyway, so we couldn't tell of his cough if it was any different, you see, because he had that for a few weeks, but it was just a chest infection. He's got a chest infection, cellulitis, because he had an infection in his legs, and they said he's also got coronavirus, and he's not going to pull through. He's going to die. So by then, it was really hard to take in. Couldn't see him. And it did his voice in the next day. He couldn't speak. They told us it's done his voice boxing. But when he went in on the Sunday night, apparently he was screaming and shouting through the night. So something must have really been hurting, I don't know. He's in a better place now, isn't he?